All righty, welcome. Thank y'all so much for joining us today. This is the second part of our legal and financial series, and I'm joined by Angela Odinsky. She will be doing our presentation for today. My name is Ariel Green, and I am the Caregiver Support and Education Specialist for Care Partners, and we provide care and support to family caregivers and older adults, including those with dementia. So thank you all so much for joining. If you joined us last week, we covered essential estate planning documents. And so if you did not join us, we sent out the recording. So you can always go back and look at any one of the recordings anytime. We upload them a few days after the presentation. And so I'm going to turn it over to Angela because today is a wonderful topic, aging in place. And so she's going to go over all the ins and outs of how to prepare legally and financially for long-term care. So Angela, I'm going to turn it over to you. You should be able to share your screen. If you all have any questions throughout the presentation, Angela and I will be monitoring the chat box. So please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box. And then if you have any other questions you can't hear, something happens, I can also see that as well. So again, thank you all for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to you, Angela, so you can take us away.
All right, thanks so much. Welcome, everybody. My name is Angela Odinsky. I'm a certified elder law attorney in Bel Air, Texas. I definitely I help people all over Texas. And primarily what we do is certified elder law attorneys, generally speaking, are going to be helping to plan for a period of decline as we age, right? Like making sure that we have the tools in place, making sure we have everything ready to go so that we can age with dignity. That's always going to be the primary goal. And so I do this 3-part series through Care Partners with Ariel, where we first talk about the documents that you should have to make sure that we can get all the decisions that need to be made for people and how to make them. And then this part's talking about long-term care, right? Aging in place, long-term care, what it looks like, the different levels. And then my next presentation next week is specifically on public benefits and qualifying for public benefits and what that looks like. So we kind of do it in this sort of linear progression of taking care of business, right? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can start the slideshow. It's all very, it's just the information is just sort of there. I'm just going to kind of like walk through it with y'all. All right. So what are we doing? Planning is bringing the future into the present so you can do something about it now, right? When you don't plan, you leave things to chance. And your wishes may not be able to be fulfilled the way that you want them to be, like your wishes for aging, how you want to age, where you want to age, what you envisioned as your golden years may be different. And if you don't plan for them, then you have the ability to lose control over what it's going to look like and what things can happen, like how things can happen in it. So we try to plan as much as possible. The goal always is going to be to age with dignity, right? I think that is number one priority when we're talking about planning for long-term care is what is your goal? What do you want your aging to look like? Are you a more social person? Do you want to make sure that you have people around? Are you less social person and you want to make sure that people aren't around? Do you want to garden? Do you want to play mahjong or bridge or some other, like, what are your interests? What do you like to do? And as you age, what do you want to do to ensure that you can age the way that you want? So aging with dignity, accessing the best possible care, and making sure that you have control over who's managing your finances and who's managing your decisions, your medical decisions. All right. So what is long-term care? It includes personal care needs, right? Activities of daily living. So anytime you need help with bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring from one room to another or from one apparatus to another, those are all activities of daily living that you might need assistance with. And when we need assistance with those kind of fit into this sort of idea of long-term care, what it means, having assistance in these very specific areas of living. There's also another category called instrumental activities of daily living. There's the housework, shopping, caring for your pets, cooking for yourself, making sure that you're taking your medications online or correctly on time. All of those are a little higher level, right? So the basic activities of daily living are getting up, putting your clothes on, getting from your bedroom to your couch. Instrumental activities of daily living are more, paying your bills, making sure that your meals are properly cooked, right? And everything is, you have all the ingredients that you need. So there are a couple of little different levels that we're talking about here. And different people need help in different areas at different times, right? And so kind of understanding it's never going to be just all one or the other. People need help in multiple different areas. And so we have to look at all the different areas. Dealing with, as we age, looking at everything from a holistic perspective is necessary so that we make sure that we are filling in the gaps. So who's going to need care? So this is my my statistics slide, right? So Department of Health and Human Services estimates that about 70% of everyone over 65 is going to need some kind of long-term care. Now, I know we all know those people who are in their 90s and they still live at home by themselves. They're still able to get up in the morning and make their coffee and take care of business. That is in the minority, right? Like that's not what all of us are going to get. Most of us are going to need some kind of help. What is that help going to look like? How are we going to pay for that help over the long term? Most people over the age of 70 have increased need of additional care as they continue to age. In 21, there was an estimated about 40,000 people in Texas living with Alzheimer's, and that's expected to increase 40% over the next 10 years. And in 22, I found this very, very interesting, the value of unpaid care. So all those family caregivers out there, the value that you are giving your loved one was estimated to be about $23 billion a year. So we are relying heavily on our unpaid caregivers to do the heavy lifting when it comes to taking care of our elders and making sure that our elders get the care that they need, to the tune of about 23 billion a year. And that's not a typo, the actual B. So we have to think about options. What are our options? What do they look like? These aren't easy decisions to make. Everything is just about choices. What are your options and what's the best option for you in the moment? There's no right answer for most of this. The only wrong answer is not taking care of things, right? But there's no right answer. There's no perfect answer. There's no one solution for everyone. What worked really well for your neighbor and their family may not work as well for you. It might not be the same, it's not the same circumstances. So every long-term care plan has to be tailored to the individuals and to the family situation. So we have to think about options in terms of care needs, what are our finances, and what are our wishes. So this is the range of long-term care options that exist, right? Unpaid caregivers, we already talked about that, right? So those family caregivers, it generally affects the women in the family, adult women in the family, significantly more than the adult men. This isn't to say that there aren't a lot of adult men caregivers out there, but statistically speaking, it's usually something that's going to affect the women of the family more. Then we have paid caregivers, right? So professionals, either they get paid hourly, to come in. They're sort of individuals that you hire, or you can go through a company that's bonded and insured, but you're paying them by the hour to be there to offer assistance to your loved ones during times that are most needed. There's over 55 communities. So these are communities that are made for people who are still on the go doing things. They're traveling. They want a turnkey lifestyle. They want to be able to lock their apartment up and go travel and see the grandkids for a couple of months, or see their adult children for a couple of months, and then come home and have everything still taken care of for them, right? They don't want to have to worry about changing light bulbs or doing the lawn or taking care of maintaining a house, right? So, and some over 55 communities do have like little cottages, houses as well. And so for those, it's someone who wants to be in a community with more people who are similarly situated, right? They're happy hours, they go shopping together. Like there's a community, you build a community of people who are aging together. So those are 55 and up communities. We have independent living, which are generally communities where you have an apartment, but there are people there, right? So you have your own apartment. It even has a little kitchen, but there are meal prep areas, or there's often like little restaurant type areas where you go and you can have meals at different times. You pay for different services. They often have hair salons and nail salons in the facilities, and they are meant to be for people who need to have somebody around, right? So they need wellness checks. They need to know that if there's an emergency, that someone's going to be there to help them fairly quickly, right? So those are independent living facilities. It's not for people who necessarily need help getting around, but it's not safe so much for them to live alone anymore. They need to be around more support, right? So independent living offers a little bit more support, not fully supported, but a little bit. Assisted living facilities are more support, right? So usually they're apartments. They do not have full kitchens. All the meals are provided. There's usually a nurse on staff, but you're still living independently, right? So you have maybe a small living room, a small bedroom, your bathroom, and then someone can come in periodically and help with bathing. Someone can come in periodically and help with different kind of care needs, whatever those are. Each assisted living facility offers different kinds of assistance, right? And so depending on what your needs are, that'll be evaluated. And so you can determine what's best for you, your family. Personal care homes are generally smaller. They are usually like 16 beds or less. They're small communities. They're more tight knit. Ones that I have seen that have run really well have a really homey feeling. They feel like they feel like you're at home. They can be very comfortable. You do have to be very careful with personal care homes, because if there are less than, I think, 3 residents, because some are just in houses and bedrooms and houses, right? And that can be perfectly fine. But if there's less than 3 residents, they may not be regulated by the state. And so personal care homes, you have to be very careful about when you're choosing a personal care home, who the owners are and how it's run, and making sure that there's people on site that are going to be able to help. Memory care facilities are specifically for people who are having memory issues. They tend to be locked facilities, and so they are there to make sure that people don't wander off, that they are in a safe place for them, even when they are not aware of where they are or what they're doing. Again, these tend to be nice, homey kinds of places to help people age who are having memory issues. They offer differing levels of care depending on what memory care facility you're in. If people just have memory issues but can generally take care of their activities of daily living, then those are usually good places. People who need a little bit more assistance may require something beyond memory care, right? And then finally, we have skilled nursing facilities, and skilled nursing facilities are what you think of when you think of the old folks home, right? They are generally very institutional facilities. They feel like hospitals. They are very much like hospitals. There are nurses and assistants, and the facility itself is much more yeah, hospital-like, I guess is a way of putting it. But it's for people who need 24/7 medical care, right? And some people need 24/7 medical care, and there's just not enough support for them to live in a memory care or assisted living facility. And so they need skilled nursing care to make sure that their medications are on time, to make sure that they're eating properly, and to make sure that they are generally taken care of and somebody is watching over them. So that's sort of our levels of long-term care options, what we have, and what there is to choose from. It can be daunting when you have a loved one who needs care and can't live at home anymore, or who needs care and they are living at home and you're trying to figure out how to keep them at home. It can be really daunting trying to figure out how to navigate all of this. And the best advice I have is to talk to other people who have gone through it, and get referrals from people. If you need home health care, get referrals to communities. If there are friends or family who are already in a community, ask them how they like it. The number one complaint on most communities is the food. Go check out the lunch, right? Ask them, find out what the food's like. So how much does long-term care cost, right? That's the big question. So we have family caregivers. It might be unpaid, but it's not free. I know all of you out there who are actively caregiving for a person right now, you understand that your time is not free. You are having to take time out of your own ability to work. So you are having to reduce your paycheck. Maybe you're having to reduce, maybe you're having to pay for things out of pocket. So unpaid caregivers, there might be an unpaid there, but obviously it's not free. It's $23 billion a year in Texas, right? Like that's about how much it is. The median hourly rate for home health aides in Houston is $27. Now, these are, again, bonded and insured companies. They're not the sort of individuals that come in and help, or that people that you can contact through your local church or community center, right? So the $27 an hour is generally for companies that operate very specifically as home health companies. There are multiple levels of home health companies, right? So there are people that offer companion care who come in and just kind of hang out with your loved one to make sure that they have everything that they need and they're not in danger. They don't do any medical. They may not do any specific activities of daily living, but they'll be there to watch over your loved one, all the way up through to home health nurses, right? Who are there to do medical to give medical care. So there's multiple levels of that, and those costs are going to vary depending on the needs of the person. Assisted living facilities, and these are based on 2023 estimates, assisted living facilities cost about $62,400 a year. So we're looking at a 171 daily rate. Although, let me do the math on that, because assisted living facilities are generally not a daily kind of, they're more of a monthly. It's kind of like just renting an apartment, right? So they're about $5,200 a month for an assisted living facility. Give or take, I'd say that's about average for Houston, between $5,000 and $6,000, sometimes more, depending on the level of care, right? And also depending on if there's a shared room or if it's a private room, like all of those things matter. Skilled nursing, you're looking at $68,000 for a semi-private room, or $188 a day, and that's a shared room with somebody else. If you want a private room, then you're looking at $255 a day. I have seen facilities with private rooms at $350 a day, $380 a day. I've seen shared rooms at $220 a day, right? So the price is going to vary depending on where you are, but these are averages. And no matter how you slice it, most people don't have the income to simply cover that every year, right? Because you're not working anymore, you're not bringing any income in, and unless you have some pretty amazing investments, it's unlikely that most people are able to pay almost $100,000 a year for care. So we have payment options, right? So payment options are paid with your income and your own savings, right? Spend it down. Purchase long-term care insurance. For those who have long-term care insurance, even a small plan that lasts a little bit of time is helpful. A lot of people don't have long-term care insurance. It hasn't gotten a lot of press. A lot of people don't know what it is or how it works. And so they just sort of avoided it. Or if they looked into it, it was really expensive when they were looking at it. So they decided that it wasn't worth it. That it's For people who have it, we use it when we can. And for people who don't, we move on. It is another way to pay for long-term care. I think it's always worth having a conversation with your financial advisor about whether or not long-term care insurance is right. But that is, that's something we all kind of have to decide. And there's been a lot of changes in the long-term care insurance industry. So there's a lot of different kinds of ways to get long-term care insurance now. You can rely on Medicaid or VA benefits. So for those veterans out there who served during wartime, specific periods of time, they were honored, they were, discharged other than dishonorably. They meet certain criteria, and their net worth, the value of their net worth is under a certain amount, then we can talk about veterans benefits. And then, of course, there's Medicaid benefits for long-term care. Veterans benefits are generally going to be a cash benefit that you can use however you need to pay for long-term care or to pay for caregivers. The Medicaid benefit generally only pays immediately for skilled nursing care. It can cover some home health care if you get on a wait list. And then we're going to talk about that a little bit. You can also implement a legal plan, right? If there's sufficient enough time to plan ahead, then you can implement a legal plan that might help you protect some of your assets while still, and your savings, and protect your home. And then you can also look at a combination of all the above, right? And sometimes that's what we do. We piece things together. We try to find the best possible ways so that a person can age in place. And I want to be clear, Medicaid benefits is always going to be the last resort. Like if there's anything we can do to plan instead of that, then we're going to look at all of those aspects first, right? And then if we need Medicaid in the future, then we do that. We take care of that. We do a little bit of planning to make it maybe available later on. So resources to consider. These are resources for if you are a caregiver and you need to find things, you need to find information. One of the incredible things about working in senior services that I've learned since I've been an elder law attorney is that there are unlimited services that are provided. If you need something, somebody is offering that service. If you need a 0-degree shower in your bathroom so that there's no steps and you can just walk directly into the bathroom, into the shower and out again, there are people who do that. If you need someone to treat that floor so that there's a non-slip substance on top of it so that you don't fall, there is somebody who can do that. If you need someone to come in and help you just kind of put your pills together in a pill box at the beginning of the week, but you don't necessarily need them to come back every day, you just need to know where it is and what time to take your medication, there are people that can do that. If you're overwhelmed by the house and you're thinking, I can't really stay in my house anymore, but oh my God, what am I going to do with all my stuff? There are people who can help you with that too, right? So there are services that there are people that provide services for all kinds of areas. So specialists who help in locating facilities, residential living facilities. So people who can kind of that we were talking about earlier, all the different levels of memory care versus assisted living versus independent living versus personal care homes, right? Like there are people who can come in and help you sort of evaluate what the situation is, help determine what's going to be the best kind of facility for you or your loved one, and then find out what your priorities are, how you want to age, what is most important to you, and then take you to different facilities that meet your criteria. What's your budget, right? And then take you around different facilities and help you choose one so that you're not having to just like pick up a phone or drive around or try to find these places on your own. So there are people who can do that. Companies who can assist with cleaning out and downsizing. That is, I find, one of the most important aspects of trying to figure out what long-term care is going to look like. We get very attached to our homes, the things inside our homes, to a point that, you know, sometimes it's not safe. We need to be in a different space. So aging in place can be more than just your house. Aging in place can include like being in an independent living. It's about your choices, really. And so if what's keeping you from doing that is, I don't know what I'm going to do with all my stuff, I look around and my brain shuts down, I'm paralyzed thinking about packing, then let somebody help you, right? So there are professionals who can help with that. Using your home to ease the financial burden, right? Like thinking about, you know, selling your house, or if there's other kinds of ways that we can look at your home to try to get some of the equity out of your home. That's something to think about. Fall prevention courses. I'm a big fan of fall prevention courses. It is so easy to go from 100% independence to 0% independence. All it takes is one fall. And if you already know that you're having balance issues, if you already know that there are tripping hazards in your house, and that there are things, you know, there are things that you can do to help prevent those kinds of effects, like taking fall prevention courses, talking to your doctor, doing balance exercises, right? So those sorts of things, having somebody come in, a geriatric care manager or somebody else come in and look around and see, you know, well, these are tripping hazards, let's get rid of this, let's clean this up over here, and just kind of help you sort of make sure your space is as safe as possible. There's some spousal pre-planning. So there's estate planning things that we can do that will help prepare a spouse in the future for the potential need for public benefits, or to set money aside for them so that they can have excess, so they can have funds to protect them later on. And then there's the STAR Plus waiver interest list, which is the Medicaid home health benefit. Now, STAR Plus waiver will pay for some assisted living facilities. It's just we don't have a lot of assisted living facilities, at least in Houston, that accept it. There might be other places throughout the state of Texas that have more assisted living facilities that accept the STAR Plus waiver, and that's always a good option. But in Houston, there are very, very few facilities that will accept the STAR Plus waiver Medicaid. And so we generally think about it as being a home health benefit. So for people who are staying at home and need home health, the only way Medicaid will pay for that is through the STAR Plus waiver interest list. So the STAR Plus waiver interest list, you have to meet the same criteria that you would have to meet for Medicaid in order to get in skilled nursing. So I'm going to talk about all of the specific criteria next week, but it primarily is you have to meet the financial criteria, you have to meet the medical necessity criteria, you have to be a citizen or legal resident. If there's like some demographic criteria you have to meet, and then you have to have your name on the interest list, right? You can't just file an application for benefits for Medicaid because you need help, right? You have to be a part of a program, and putting the name on the interest list is one of those. Now, I have some colleagues that start advising their clients the moment they turn like 60, get your name on the list. You never know when you're going to need it. And when your name comes up on the list, if you don't need it yet, you can always say, thank you so much. I don't need it yet, but keep me on the list. And you just stay on the list and they'll just rotate you up. And that is like always being on that list kind of gives you a heads up for if you need home healthcare benefits in the future, then you know your name's already on the list and you don't have to wait. Oftentimes people come to me when they're just about out of money and they're like, yeah, we need to get home healthcare through Medicaid. And I'm like, okay, well, you're going to have to, like, there's not going to be, it might take a few months before that process, before we're even going to get to the point where we can apply, much less get approved, right? Because there's that waiting period. Right now in Harris County, it hasn't been that long, just a couple of months. But in the past, depending on how long the wait list gets and whether or not Congress decides to fund it appropriately, we can end up, I mean, Texas Congress, it can end up 9 months to a year, right? So it depends on the variables at the time. So it never hurts to go ahead and put a name on the Star Plus waiver interest list. The numbers are here. That 713 number is for Houston. I've had better luck getting through to somebody using that number than the 877 number. The 877 number is for all of Texas, but I find that that number will rarely get, like, nobody answers it, but it's the number that I have. So the 713 number for Harris County works. I say a year or so wait here. That's, assume that, and if it comes up earlier, bonus, right? So you'll give your name, social security number, contact information, and if the name comes up and care is not needed, you just ask to be kept on the list. So this is a very, very important benefit for people who need home health care. And again, you have to meet all the same criteria as Medicaid, which we're going to go over in the next week's slides in the next week's presentation. But this is one way to kind of help to age in place. So what do we want to avoid, right? We want to avoid running out of money. That's kind of the big picture. We want to avoid leaving the home unprotected, right? A lot of people are concerned about, what's going to happen with my house. Like, these are general estate planning things that we can take care of. And then risking the health of family or spousal caregivers. I know that all the caregivers out there, you are happy to do it for your family, but there are some significant health risks that you are under because of the stress, right? So caregivers are at increased risk for cardiac events, increased risk for stroke, increased risk for all kinds of things. And so kind of helping alleviate some of the stress and pressure on unpaid caregivers, it definitely also has to be a goal. So that we can avoid, serious health problems or death of the caregivers. So considerations, right? Things to think about when you're talking about aging in place, aging in your home, the conditions of your home, right? Making sure there's no tripping hazards, making sure it's easy to navigate, thinking about possible modifications. They can be costly, but if it means the difference between having to move to a facility or not, then that's something to think about. It's always worth thinking about all of the different aspects, right? So you think about everything. Think about the value of the house. You think about, do you want to stay in the house? Do you want to be someplace more social? What are all of your options? You have to look at the big picture, right? But look at possible modifications, because that might help you stay in your home longer. And there might be certain benefits through the county or through the state that might help you make certain modifications. Those things are again worth looking at. I know there was a Medicaid benefit. It wasn't much. It was like a few $1,000s, but it could help put ramps in or do things like that. So there might be some benefits to do that. Your area agency on aging is going to be an incredible resource for kind of helping determine what sort of benefits might be out there for you. Think about proximity to assistance, right? Like if your loved one's living by themselves and everyone in the family is 45 minutes away, that's a problem. Like maybe we need to rethink the living situation, as hard as that is to do. Because if loved one needs help, that's a long way to go. If you're aging in place and you can't drive so much anymore, what's your proximity to groceries? How are you getting your groceries? How are you getting to your doctor's appointments? How are you getting around, right? All of these things, and while we kind of like people know, everyone knows whether or not these are problems, they don't want to think about it because they don't want to find a solution to it. You know, they don't want to leave their house or whatever. These are important conversations to be having. And they are absolutely like we don't get to make, we have to take control of the choices that we can control right now, right? That's what we have to do. And they may not be choices we want to make, but they give us the ability to make those decisions ourselves, as opposed to getting into a situation where somebody else starts making those decisions for us. Keep as much control as possible for as long as possible. And then, you know, the availability of long-term care services near you, public transportation, meal delivery, et cetera. I have definitely had people who got public benefits through for home health care, but they lived in a rural area in Brazoria County. And so there were no service providers that would come out there. And so they were calling me saying, you know, we got this approval, we can't get people. And it's like, well, that is an issue. Like not everybody, if you're in a more isolated area, or you're in an area that's further out, then there is a likelihood that you won't be able to find a provider. Just because Medicaid will pay for it doesn't mean that they have somebody who's going to be able to come out. And so that has happened before, where you know, someone got approved for the benefit, but then there was nobody to actually come and meet, and who could meet the criteria to come and do the care, because these are all like third-party vendors. Texas Health and Human Services has no control over them. They just pay them, right? The vendor accepts the payment from Medicaid, and Medicaid agrees to pay. But if they don't agree to come out to your house because it's not within their service area or whatever, no one can force them to do that. So you kind of have to consider the proximity of help where you are. And considerations for aging in a community, right? So again, thinking about being in a community as opposed to just like in a house is worth thinking about, right? These are worth having discussions about, like what would be the trigger for when it's time to move out of the house, if that's necessary. Think about access to social activities, right? Availability of wellness checks, availability of transportation to stores and doctors. A lot of those independent and assisted living facilities have transportation to go different things. They go to baseball games and they go to events. They can offer assistance with housekeeping and meal preparation, right? So there's a lot of benefits to some of these communities. It's not the right solution for everyone, but it is the right solution for a lot of people, and it's worth looking into. So let's do a little bit of a case study, right? So Mary's story, a 78-year-old who recently lost her husband after a long battle with cancer. Her family wanted to make sure that she'd be able to take care of her health, or take care of her in case her health failed. Her 2 children live in different states, right? Adult children out of state, very common. And they worry about her living alone. She owns her home, $300,000, worth about $300,000. And she has savings in cash, savings CDs, about $225,000. She receives Social Security, And she has a long-term care policy she's been paying on for about 20 years and provides a daily benefit of $150. So this is kind of this is Mary's situation. She has her home, she's got a little bit of retirement cash, and she has a long-term care policy and a little bit of Social Security. So keep the long-term care policy. People who come to me and like, oh, do I need to keep my long-term care policy? Yes. If you've been paying on it this long, just keep paying on it. It's worth it. I know that they might send you letters that are like, oh, we can reduce your premiums if you reduce some of your benefits, and some people do that, some people don't. It's worth keeping those policies. They can really extend the life of your retirement and extend the life extend your ability to stay at home for longer, or to live in an assisted living facility for longer, right? Place a portion of the liquid assets in a family trust the kids would oversee to get funds from if needed. Keep some funds for Mary. So again, some of these sort of estate planning techniques that we can use to kind of like hold some money back so that we make sure someone is that Mary can maintain her independence, but as she gets older and might have some issues with dementia or wants to protect her from scams, right? Because elder exploitation and scams is a $36 billion a year industry, and it is heartbreaking. And so, maybe as part of a protection, we create this trust so that the kids are kind of controlling it and they can do things for Mary. Now, this is only if you have kids you can trust, right? Not all kids are trustworthy. But then at least the kids are controlling that. So if Mary does is subject to a financial scam or financial exploitation, there's a limit to how much damage can be done, because we have this money that's kind of set aside that would not be subject to that. So that's something that I talk about a lot with families is, how do we protect from future financial exploitation? What can we do to make sure that we're not, that we can set somebody up so that there's, they want to maintain as much control as possible. No one's trying to take anyone's control away, but also protect them from these really nefarious and malicious outside forces. So we might do that, right? So, Mary keeps funds for home repairs and groceries and everyday kinds of things, whatever she wants, but we protect some others back. And we create supercharged powers of attorney for health and financial decisions. So for those of you who were in my last session, we talked about the durable power of attorney, and it's the single most important document you can have while you're alive, because it is the document that determines who is going to manage your financial affairs if you're not able to manage them. But the statutory form of a durable power of attorney in Texas that you pull offline is limited in what the powers can do. And it might say somewhere on there, this power of attorney allows my agent to do whatever I would normally be able to do. Well, that's not really how the state of Texas looks at it. There are certain things that your agent's just simply not able to do without express permission, such as giving away your stuff. So, for example, if we created that trust, for someone's benefit, and then left them with money to use for things, and it turns out that somebody's scamming them out of that money, then we wouldn't necessarily be able to put any of that money into the trust without a special gifting provision in the power of attorney, right? And so, or if we want to do something to protect if we do need Medicaid and we want to protect the house from Medicaid estate recovery, then again, sometimes the power of attorney is going to need specific provisions in that to allow the agent to be able to do what's necessary to protect that home. And so we want supercharged powers of attorney that you just pull offline, or that you potentially got from a traditional estate planning attorney that doesn't practice an elder law, is probably not going to be sufficient to do everything that you're going to want to do as you age, or want your agents to do as you age. So those are really, really important. And if you do nothing else with an elder law attorney, at least get the durable power of attorney done. All right, so the result, if Mary's health should fail, or if she should become victim to some kind of financial scan, so if her health should fail, she's got the long-term care insurance policy first. Bam. So the first thing we do is we trigger that policy. She gets some health care, and then she can use her own funds for additional care. The kids can use the trust funds for additional care, etc. After 5 years, the assets in the family trust would be protected for Medicaid purposes if we need Medicaid, right? So now we have this pocket of money that's been set aside for Mary's care for additional things that is beyond, that's kind of that we can use if necessary. And again, it protects from nefarious people. And if Mary becomes unable to make decisions for herself, then she has the financial and healthcare powers of attorney to make sure that those decisions can be made. So this is kind of like if you've got a little time, right? If we're getting older and we know that we are going to be having some health issues, maybe there's a diagnosis of some kind, like let's get in and do some planning now, because the more pre-planning we do, the more control you have over your own future, over your own aging and how that's going to work. If Mary and her husband had planned ahead, then typically money received from that we could have created some spousal trusts, like I had mentioned earlier, like anything from Mary's husband would have gone to her in a special kind of trust that would have been exempted from Medicaid because of the way we did the planning. And then long-term care, and then so that way sort of half of it would be protected as well, right? So there's a lot of things we can do to protect ahead of time so that we can get the care that we need. We can protect a little bit for additional expenses that might have to be made. And there are things that we can do in our estate planning documents to allow for that. So if Mary had done nothing, everything would have been spent. There would be nothing left. Nothing left for the kids, nothing left for additional things that she might need that Medicaid doesn't cover. Uh, there's her choices would have been limited, right? Maybe just nursing home. If we didn't have these, if we didn't have these pockets of money that were protected, that didn't get spent in other ways, right, for her care, then there are, there's limits to what we can do. And our kids can help her. So it's really important both today and next week and even last week to understand that everybody's situation is unique. What worked for your cousin's neighbor is not necessarily something that's going to work for you, right? So everyone's got a different picture of what they want in their aging. Some people have never thought about it. Like they've never thought about how do they want to spend their days as they age. It's worth thinking about. It's worth having the conversation. Like, what do you want your aging to look like? I've seen it a couple of different ways. I've seen people who have had incredible family around them with amazing caregivers, and they were always like, they always had somebody. They never experienced the sort of loneliness, right, that some people can feel, because they just always had people. That's rare, right? More often, I end up like helping people where there's, an elderly parent with kids out of state, and they just kind of sit in the house by themselves, and they don't necessarily have the social interaction. And being social, having social interaction is such an incredible indicator of quality of life. And that's kind of a key, in my opinion, that's kind of a key to aging with dignity, is having the highest quality of life. And so finding ways to be social, going to community events, going to senior events that are in the area. Everyone has different resources to rely on, right? Some people have monetary resources, some people have family resources, some people are lucky to have both. Some people are unlucky and have neither, right? And so we just kind of have to do what we can. depending on the person's situation. Everyone's going to be working on a different timeline with a different level of urgency. And there's no such thing as one size fits all long-term care planning. Please do not rely on anything that you read on the internet when it comes to long-term care planning or Medicaid or veterans benefits or anything, simply because the internet can be wrong and it can cause issues, right? Plus, it's all different in every state because Medicaid is different in every state. So if you are, especially next week when we talk about specifically like benefits planning, if you are one of those people who has a loved one out of state, nothing I say is really going to be relevant for the simple fact that every program is going to be different. And so anytime you read about what to do for long-term care planning or benefits planning on the internet, you don't know if it's state specific. And so it's really important that you don't rely on doing your own research in this particular area, just because it's so complex and there's no depository of just information out there that you can just get and gather and know everything that you need to know. So where to start? You start by understanding the scope of health issues for your loved ones, right? Or for yourself, if you're like listening to this on your own behalf. Consider home health care for the most difficult hours of the day. It is so much better to accept help when you need help for like 10% of the time versus getting to a point where you need help 100% of the time, right? You maintain your independence for 90% of the time, accepting that 10% help for as long as possible. And I get this all the time from adult children and caregivers who are like, we keep hiring home health keepers and mom keeps firing them. I know, I'm sorry. We do the best we can. We try to figure that out, right? And ultimately what it comes down to is some people are just, it's not safe for them to be at home by themselves. And so if they don't accept having somebody in the house, then their safest option may be not to be in the house. And those are hard conversations to have, but they're necessary. Consider alternatives to home ownership. Just because you've owned your home for a long time, it doesn't have to be the only home. There might be other options out there like assisted living. If it means selling your house so that you have the money to pay for assisted living, if that's what's going to give you the best level of care that you can get, then that might be an option worth thinking about. As a caregiver, know your breaking point. Think about at what point you just can't do this anymore. The reason I am an elder law attorney, so like my origin story, I was getting out of litigation. I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. So I went to a big conference, a lawyer conference in Galveston, where they were talking about elder law and guardianship and estate planning with these kinds of things in mind. And I'm like, well, that's really cool. And the same weekend, my mom calls because her husband, who they've been together since I was 12, like he's as much my dad as my biological father, kept falling out of bed. He had vascular dementia and he kept falling out of bed. And every time he fell out of bed, my mom had to call EMTs to come and put him back into bed. And she just called sobbing, asking if I would forgive her for putting him in a facility because she just couldn't do it anymore. And my answer was, Mom, you're killing yourself. Like, you're not able to care for him. He's not getting the care he needs, and you're killing yourself. Like, this is not good for either one of you. So if this is what we need to do, then this is what we need to do. And I just happened to be at this conference where there are these attorneys who were talking about how to do this thing. And it was just serendipitous. And I just dropped everything. And that's what I've been doing since. Because I recognized that I had no idea that this was something that I could do for a living. and just like being able to help families through this, especially when I had gone through it myself. I think that it was just absolutely serendipitous. But that was my mom's breaking point. She didn't think about it prior to it. She just got to a point and she had a meltdown. And it's so important to think about, like, when can you no longer do this? And then what's the plan when you can't? Because sometimes caretakers they just can't continue. It's not good for their health and it's not safe for their loved one. And I think that's the primary thing to remember, is that if you're not able to take care of yourself, you're not able to take care of them. And so it's really important to know what the plan is and to really think about that as a caregiver and what that means. Know your loved one's income and assets. I know that there's a generation who didn't talk about that. We don't talk about money. They got to talk about it, or you got to find it. And that's it. You got to know. You can't, you have to know everything inside and out if we're going to do any kind of planning. And contact an elder law attorney to discuss your needs. It's not good enough to go to an estate planning attorney. You need somebody specialized in this particular area who can walk you through the ins and outs and understand that sometimes there's no every decision is going to have consequences. Like, I can't protect taxes and do Medicaid planning, right? Like, we have to kind of deal with one or the other. Like, there's always going to be choices that you have to make, and some have repercussions and some may not, but you need to talk to somebody who is really familiar in this area in order to get that kind of advice. So local resources. Area Agency on Aging, again, I'm a big fan. You can kind of call and give them your situation, and they can help you with kind of talk through different options in your area that might help. Every county has its own area on aging, and so it doesn't matter where you are in Texas, you can contact your county office. And then the Star Plus waiver interest list, again, for your loved one, if they intend to be at home and you want them to be at home and you need additional care, then let's get them on the Star Plus waiver interest list. They don't have to qualify for Medicaid until their name comes up on the list. So even if they're not qualified today, that's okay. And they may not be qualified in the future when their name first comes up, and that's okay. You say, keep me on the list, right? And then longtermcare.gov has some resources as well. So that is my spiel. We are right at 1 o'clock. So I did the whole thing. I actually did it in an hour. That's crazy. I didn't see any questions come up in either the Q&A or chat. Did anyone have any specific questions for me today? I know next week is the big one that everyone kind of waits for.
Yeah, that'll probably be the one that
Yeah,
all the questions. And
that's
then
the one where everyone has the questions. Yeah.
right. And then also it is a lot of information. And so people are probably processing it. So what I would encourage you all to do is watch the recording again. And, if you have some questions, you can bring them for next week. I see Susie, you raised your hand. Let me unmute you so that you can ask your question live. Let's see. Okay, Susie, you're unmuted. Or you can unmute. There you go.
Is there a way to have someone who's not a family member be your agent? And how can that be set up?
You do the document. So when it comes to naming your agents, you name the person that is going to be the right agent for you. And if it's not a blood relative, so be it. Like, you name whoever you want. It's the person you trust most. And it's just a matter of going to do those documents, right? It's a matter of like contacting your elder law attorney, and putting the documents together, putting their name on it, and then signing it. It's the same exact process as if you were naming somebody who was family. There is nothing in the rules, there's nothing legally that requires you to name any specific person to do anything. You don't have to leave your stuff to your kids. You don't have to name them on anything. It's entirely like you are in total control of how you set up these documents and who you name for what.
Are those people normally paid if they're not family and they're not going to benefit from your will?
You can choose that, right? So there is an option in the there's an option in the document that says, you know, I want to allow my agent to be reimbursed and compensated for their fair and receive fair and reasonable compensation for their actions. Or you can say, I want them to be reimbursed but not compensated, right? The general is that we do compensate our agents, whether they're family or not. Generally, we do compensate our agents because sometimes being an agent is a full-time job.
Yeah.
And so it can be onerous on somebody to do that. And so absolutely, you can make sure that they have the ability to receive compensation.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Somebody else asked if I'm licensed in other states. I am licensed in Texas and Washington. So it's kind of far apart. If you are looking for an elder law attorney in another state, then I can recommend you go to two places. One is hang on, let me open it up to make sure I tell you the correct address. I believe it is getelderlaw.com. And that is you can go list for your state, and those are for certified elder law attorneys. So that is a place where you can go find attorneys who have passed this extra special test dealing with elder law issues. If that one is not, if you don't find anybody in your area there, then I recommend going to the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys website, which is NAELA, NAELA.org. And again, you can put in the zip code of where you need to find an elder law attorney. And then there will be a bunch of people who will pop up. The people who do have CELA designations, generally speaking, are also members of NAELA. And so you'll see them when they pop up, like in your area. And just because someone doesn't have a CELA doesn't mean they're not also an excellent elder law attorney, but someone with a CELA has gone through a little bit of extra training. So I recommend both of those places if you're looking for an elder law attorney in your state. And I do recommend that you do not try to seek assistance from an out-of-state attorney when it comes to elder law, because everything is so state specific. Those powers of attorney are going to be state specific. The wills are state specific. The Medicaid planning is state specific. It is all very, very individual to the state that you're in. And so find somebody experienced in your area.
Thank you, Angela.
You're welcome.
Did not know you were licensed in Washington.
I
Something
am.
new today.
And it's a totally different program.
Yes. Okay, looks like I have two people that have raised their hand.
Okay.
All right, Nettie, you can go.
How often do you have to update your power of attorney?
Well, there's not a legal requirement that you update your power of attorney. So as long as the power of attorney has all the powers that you need and it still names the people that you want to name, then it's valid. It doesn't like have an expiration date.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I would say if you move from a different state and you have a different state's power of attorney, to go ahead and update it to Texas or to the whatever state you moved to, because again, those are very specific state documents. And while most of the time people will honor a power of attorney from another state, it can cause issues.
Angela, Susie.
Susie?
No, sorry, it was my little pinky went astray.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
No worries. All righty, does anybody have any additional questions? We all processing all this wonderful information. Okay, looks like we have, and feel free to drop your questions in the chat, or if you feel comfortable, let's see, Rosalind. Okay, go ahead.
Rosalind, what's your question?
Okay, Rosalind, we're gonna skip and go to Michelle, and then feel free, after Michelle, you can go.
Okay. Hi. So, real quick, to tell you the truth, I was driving. I was actually on my way to go see my dad on my lunch break. I work and I'm blessed enough to be able to catch some of your videos to educate myself with this. And so my question when I was driving at my dad's, it was about the life care. I mean the health care for like because I do have it at work. You know, I do a little bit of this caregiving for my dad and for myself, you know, so I can prepare myself when I'm older. Um, anyways, what were you mentioning about if we do have it, it would be, you know, okay to go ahead and keep it?
If you have long-term care insurance, review your policy, right? If you have long-term care insurance, look at the policy, make sure you understand what it does, what it pays for, how it pays for things. And I do recommend keeping it. Because he might, if he has it for himself and he might need it, if you have it for yourself, then most
Okay.
likely you're going to need it.
Okay, thank you. That's good. I had missed that part.
Sure.
Can I mute me?
Awesome, thank you. All right,
Thank you.
Rosalind, are you ready? If not,
Yes.
okay, go
Can
ahead.
you hear me?
Yes, we
Can
hear
you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay. I have a question about the power of attorney.
Mhm.
Can that power of attorney have access to all of your properties and deal with all of your properties and sell all of your properties without your consent?
So, well, it depends on what's in that document, right? And so if you if you have capacity, then no, the agent should not be acting without your consent.
Okay.
They're not like that, an agent and a durable power of attorney or any power of attorney. There's a question here about what's the difference between a durable power of attorney and a regular power of attorney. There's no, we use the term durable power of attorney. So like that's the same thing.
Okay.
An agent works for the principal. So the sort of legal construct is that the principal, who's the person who signed the document, whose property we're talking about, right? They are allowing another person to act on their behalf. The agent can't veto what the principal wants. The agent can't go behind the principal's back. The agent can't do things that the principal doesn't want them to do. If they do, then they are legally liable under breach of fiduciary duty. And so that's the first thing. When a person becomes incapacitated and the agent is kind of making all the decisions for the person, then they have to do what's in the best interest, right? What's in the best interest of the estate and what's in the best interest of the person themselves. And so that's how it works. Generally speaking, yes, an agent, ultimately you can give an agent authority to sell all your stuff. And that might be exactly what you need to be able to do, right? But you can, like, there's any number of ways you can limit those powers as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Talk to your attorney about your powers of attorney. It's very important you get legal advice on these things. I can give you generals, I can't offer specific legal advice.
Okay, Michelle, did you have another question or did I just miss?
No, I don't. I just need to take that off.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, that was me. I thought I
Sorry.
cleared it. There we go. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Alrighty. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Angela. We'll give it a minute, see if there's any more questions. I don't see anything in the chat. I do believe you answered the one about the difference between a durable power of attorney and a regular power of attorney, and it is the same, correct?
Same thing. Yeah, sometimes we
you.
call it a statutory durable power of attorney. We call it a power of attorney. We call it a durable power of attorney. They're all
All the same.
financial power of attorney. Like it's all, we're talking about the same things.
Awesome. Well, if there are
right.
no more questions, thank you all so much. Thank you, Angela. This has been great. Join us next week for crisis planning, which some people, you may be in that space. And if that is you, then please join us.
Absolutely.
Right, and we'll be sending the recording out within the next few days.
All right. Thank you all. We'll see you next week.
Thank y'all. See you.